Ladies and gentlemen, hey yo fellas, welcome into another two-game NBA slate. And I know some people out there probably maybe getting tired of two-game slates. I'm getting re-energized. I'm having a good time out here right now because we get to dive deep. Like when it's a 12-game slate, you can't really dive deep. You can try and dive deep, but you can't dive super deep. You're diving into pool and you're hitting your head on the 3-foot motherfucking kiddie pool. Right now, we can dive up into that 8 to 12-foot Olympic-style pools and get really deep into it. So we're going to do that again. And for the sake of time, we're going to do it and get right on into it right now. So like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Two-game slates will be live again an hour before lock. And yesterday, we had a great showing. 5,000 people were watching and tuning in for that live stream. So if you want to be one of those people, get your questions and answers in and get your schmacks all in order. Ended up yesterday winning a whole bunch of dollar rooskies on Prize Picks. A lot of people in the community are one that we ended up going with in this show and on the live stream. Hit very nice for 10x. Let's do it all again today. Let's start off with Atlanta today out of the one of the four teams, as they're now 1-0 in this series. They come in as an underdog in this game, and they currently have no DeAndre Hunter from game one. He is a game-time decision in this game, and that's not great. Like, DeAndre Hunter is a good stretch three. He's not McCall Bridges level, which we just saw last night, but he's a good stretch three who can play defense and shoot the ball. He's younger, right? So that's going against him, so more experience will be a positive, but they need him on a Tobias Harris, and he didn't play in that last game, and he had a week to kind of prepare for that last game. So that's concerning because how healthy can he really be 2 days later as a game-time decision today? I'm projecting him in right now for 30 minutes, but it's not something that I feel comfortable with. The other reason why is because right knee soreness is the injury that he dealt with during the season that made him miss a whole bunch of time. So when you factor that in of him missing a month plus just for that injury, and now it's sore again, is there something really serious going on here? That's the concern, and obviously that would then affect his play. So in game one, they scored 42 points in the first quarter, this Hawks team, and Bogdanovich and the rest of the team was just hitting every three possible. They had 6 guys attempt 4 or more threes. They were fantastic from three-point range, shooting in this game 43% on 47 attempts. You can't have that many attempts in a game. And look, Trae Young was fine. He shot like 47% from the field, 35% from three. It wasn't like an outstanding game. He was fine. He had a very good game, but it wasn't outstanding, and they were able to put up 128 points against the Sixers. The Sixers have problems trying to guard Trae Young. And it's not as simple as saying, oh, Ben Simmons just put him on Trae Young. No, because that happened in the third quarter, and Trae Young did whatever he wanted to Ben Simmons. That's the issue. Like, Ben Simmons can be a defensive player of the year, but it's a different story when you are a size almost 7-foot player and you're going up against a shifty guard who has handles. And we saw that. It put Ben Simmons into third quarter foul trouble, and that's a concern. So Trae Young was fantastic. They started off major lead. And while Atlanta was doing everything right, Philly was doing everything wrong in terms of not just missing some shots, but also turnover city for them. We can talk about that more when we get into the Philly side of it. But let's focus more so on Atlanta today. And we're going to talk about props. We're going to talk about player props and betting, and we're going to talk about DFS, of course. I'll give you every single team's top plays for daily fantasy sports, where I'm at in the prop market's already placed a wager today on 3 props, and then also we can get any leans that we have on some of these games here today. So here's basically what happened in that first game from Atlanta side. It's very simple to break down what Atlanta was doing in that game. I mean, they were just making fucking shots. They made 43% of their three-pointers, and Trae Young was aggressive. Trae Young was driving. He was getting by anybody in front of him, Ben Simmons included, was easily getting by Danny Green, and lots to talk about Doc Rivers' rotations and how terrible they were. I think everybody kind of noticed that from game one. Easily getting by Danny Green, and when he wasn't getting all the way to the basket because Joel Embiid was on the court for 38 minutes in this game and not very mobile, so it's kind of just having a guy's statue in the paint when Embiid in the regular season, when he's not injured and has a meniscus tear in his motherfucking knee, he can get out to the three-point line, but they couldn't do that in this series. So it was dish it out. Trae Young dished it out 12 times, 5 of them made for Bogdanovich in this game. Dish it out. Solomon Hills taking 7 threes in this game, making a few of them, right? Dish it out. Trae Young himself pulling and popping at time off of screens. So that was basically the game plan, and they noticed that Embiid wasn't mobile on defense, so it was like 5-on-4 on defense anytime you wanted to dish it out, which means there's always going to be an open three-point shooter. And if there's not an open three-point shooter, it's because you're not fully crashing on Trae Young and he's going to the basket. So that's the concern. That is the concern, and it's easy to kind of get on this. You can just put guys on the court who can switch a little bit better and maybe even potentially stay on Trae Young better. That's where Matisse Thybulle and George Hill may come into play today, projecting them both for a little bit more run than they got in that last game, because I think they're going to be a lot more needed than Danny Green. Danny Green's threes are great, but he is not the worst on defense, but he's not going to be able to guard Trae Young. And if that's the case, his body needs to come off the court more, because Seth Curry is playing very good on offense and playing massive minutes. Game one ended in a really weird way with a bunch of fouls and the team scoring 11 points in 13 seconds, which is absolutely insane. But here's what I'm projecting for this game. And now let's start to get into this. So here's what I'm projecting for Atlanta in this game in their minutes right now. The only thing you're not seeing is a couple of minutes from Lou Williams and Onika. I gave them 10 minutes apiece. So I'm giving a little bit more run. So I'm projecting in Hunter. If Hunter's out, well, then take his 30 minutes out and give them to Solomon Hill. Gave Tony Snell another like 2 to 4 minutes, and you can throw an extra minute or two on Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter closed that last game out. I would expect that to be DeAndre Hunter in this game if indeed he is healthy. So Trae Young, massive minutes. He's an interest of mine. Bogdanovich, massive minutes, 37. He got in a little bit of foul trouble in that last game. Lost about 2 or 3 minutes in the second quarter, and he still played 36 minutes in the game. So 37 might actually be low on him. Collins played fine. Collins looked good in that game. I think he's sort of an underrated piece in this series, but he looked good overall. Outside of that, though, it's pretty straightforward for this team. We know what their starters are going to be. We just have to wait on the health of DeAndre Hunter. They already tipped their cap in game 1 that Solomon Hill will start for him. I would not be shocked to see if Kevin Huerter is in the starting rotation, though, if indeed they wanted to switch some things up. Don't expect Lou Williams to see much run. Don't expect Tony Snell to be in the rotation if Hunter is playing. And Gallinari was kind of an odd man out on this. He has some offense, but he provides really nothing on defense. And when the rest of their offense was going off, he's not really needed out there. So for fantasy today, the way that I would rank this team out right now for point per dollar from my projections over on Patreon, which I encourage you to check out, help with player props, help with your betting lines, and obviously help with your daily fantasy sports lineups, whether it's because we have the lineup optimizer, the rankings, projections, whatever it might be, top player pools. Trae Young, John Collins, Bogdanovich are my top 3 interests. And then after that, Hunter if he plays, Capella, and Kevin Huerter. Those are the 6 guys I have in a player pool right now from this team. Currently do not have any props in for this team and have no bets on Atlanta, but I do have a bet on the Philadelphia side of this, and I'll look over to that side right now. In Philadelphia, as we can see right here, is a little bit interesting. A lot of things went wrong in this game, whether it was from coaching, whether it was from sloppy play, and the sloppy play was probably induced by some coaching putting on some inexperienced units that are not great players altogether on the court and leaving those units on there. So this is a gross game 1, and I don't expect this to be indicative of the rest of the series. Now, Joel Embiid's health, he's questionable today, will be pretty important, of course. He looked good on offense. He looked fantastic on offense, but like we said, he was a little bit immobile on defense, so that's going to have to get better for you. But Philly has defensive issues in this series, and it all stems from Trae Young because what he's able to do. When Joel Embiid, then we already kind of broke it down. Joel Embiid's immobile. Trae Young's getting to the basket. He's getting by anybody in front of him. Ben Simmons after the game said, I want to be on Trae more. Well, Ben Simmons, you were on Trae in the third quarter and did anything he wanted against you, Mr. Defensive MVP of the year. And if you're a Sixers fan out there and that's taking it to heart, you're just too prideful, right? And I get it. You're a fan of the team, but Ben Simmons was getting cooked, and sure, the fouls are so touchy and things like that. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. When the guy's getting by you and you put your hands on him, it potentially is going to be a foul, right? So, yes, not anybody can stay in front of Trae Young. And I don't think they're going to ever put Danny Green back on him in this series. That's for damn sure. Trae Young was cooking Danny Green left and right, but the real issue in this game was the sloppy play, the turnovers. They had 19 turnovers. They had 7 turnovers in the first quarter. And, oh, yeah, they had 5 turnovers on 8 possessions when their second unit was on the team. A second unit that did not score in 5 straight minutes. The end of the first quarter, in the first 4.5 minutes of the second quarter, they did not score a point, and that's when Atlanta started to break things off. I mean, Atlanta already had like a 15-point lead at the end of the first quarter, started that run against this secondary unit, went on a 17-0 run. Not a single point scored in over 5 minutes by the second unit. That second unit that featured a second unit. I'll pull up some of the minutes right now for Philadelphia. A second unit that featured Matisse Thybulle, a defensive catalyst, fine, nothing on offense. Dwight Howard, who is not really providing much on offense these days outside of just some paint, shot, layups, rebounds, that type of stuff. Furkan Korkmaz, who's barely played in the postseason. He has a jumper to him. That's about it. Tyrese Maxey, again, a rookie, not much experience at all. And George Hill, the biggest veteran of this and who was ball handling. So Doc Rivers thought it was a great idea to put out their most inexperienced lineup altogether, not leave it to Tobias Harris, not leave it Ben Simmons out there to control this unit, not even a Seth Curry to control this unit, right? They put basically 4 guards out there. Maybe you can say like Korkmaz and Thybulle are small forwards, and then they go with a static center in Dwight Howard. Not much shot creation at all in that offense. When Tyrese Maxey and George Hill have to be the dominating forces on your unit for a 6 to 7 minute rotation, and then you call a timeout and you leave that unit in, that's bad coaching by Doc Rivers. We can scrutinize coaching and we don't have all the facts all the time, but that is some pretty clear bad coaching. When a team's on a 17-0 run, you call a timeout and you continue to leave that unit in for another minute or 2. So sloppy play from a sloppy unit and sloppy coaching, in my opinion. And obviously, when you're on a 17-0 run and you're already down by 10 points in the game, when you get down that big in the game, Atlanta's biggest lead being 26 in this game, it's really hard to come back from that. And Philadelphia did in the third and fourth quarter, but it's really hard to end up coming back from that. So you can see some of the minutes on the screen right now. I'm not giving Joel Embiid his full 38. He's probably really sore, but I think he can play it. We obviously saw it in game 1. I gave him 36, Tobias Harris 36. The starters are basically getting big minutes. Danny Green's the one guy I can see whose minutes come down because defensively, and this is the postseason, threes in defense. His threes are there sometimes, but they don't need him as much when you have Seth Curry out there balling, and guys off the bench like George Hill can get hot in that standpoint. Korkmaz to an extent. but his defense is the concern here. So if they wanted to go out there and give Matisse Thybulle, who I have for 20 minutes right now, instead of giving Matisse Thybulle, and we can scroll to see the rest of the minutes on this team, you give Matisse Thybulle 30 minutes or 28 minutes, those minutes probably directly come off of at the expense of Danny Green. So there's a chance Danny Green only plays 24, 25 minutes today because of his defense and not being able to be out there as much when Trae Young's out there, and Trae Young plays 38 to 40 minutes in this game today, so that's going to be a little bit of a concern. So I much prefer Seth Curry, whose minutes are just so much more locked in at $5,000 than Danny Green at $4,700 from this team. But all of those main four starters look appealing to me today. Joel Embiid, as it stands right now, is my highest projected player on the day, not by a massive amount, by about 1.5 points over one Kawhi Leonard. But if your name's not Kawhi Leonard, he's projecting out by about 8.5 more points than anybody else on the slate. So Joel Embiid looks really good for me today. He's questionable. We are going to assume that he plays, but we'll see how that one goes. If they were up 1-0 in this series, there's a decent chance he doesn't play in this game for more rest if there's soreness. But being down 0-1, really tough if you go down 0-2. As for the rest of this, I could see guys like Maxey picking up some more run, but I think the biggest pieces to pick up more run would be 1, George Hill, and 2, Matisse Thybulle. I gave George Hill 16 minutes. He only played like 10 or 11 in that first game. There's a chance he could play even more there. From a DFS standpoint, $3,400, I think it puts him in a player pool. Thybulle in that first game played about 17, 18 minutes because of his defense. I think there's a chance he could play more because right now your best chances of guarding Trae Young are probably, in my opinion, in this order, Thybulle, but you get like a 0 on offense there. Ben Simmons, you can get a little bit more on offense, of course, but not much shots. And then George Hill from both an experience and defensive standpoint. Those are the 3 guys who can guard him. Not Danny Green. Danny Green would be at best my 4th option at best. So with that being said, Danny Green likely sees a hit to minutes, and if the coaches make adjustments, which you would hope they do for the money that they get paid to do their job, Matisse Thybulle sees an increase, and so on and so forth for George Hill. So right now from this Philadelphia 76ers team, I actually have them, and I ended up taking them on the spread in this game. I expect a bounce back. I don't expect those bad of rotations where they'll go on 17-0 runs without scoring. I don't expect as many sloppy turnovers. I don't expect Trae Young's team to shoot 47 threes and make 43% of them, right? A lot of things went well. Obviously, when you score 128 points without your superstar, I mean, he had a good game, but having an over-the-top 60% shooting game, a lot has to go right for you. A lot has to go wrong for the other team. And Philadelphia was still able to get it within a couple of points down the stretch because of sloppy end of the game play by Atlanta. So I'll take the spread. It's at like -5 in some spots right now with Philadelphia. I'll take their spread there. My interest on this team in ranking order as it stands right now: Joel Embiid, Seth Curry, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, Matisse Thybulle, George Hill. Those are the 7 guys in a player pool. And now we can get into the second game of the series, Utah and LAC, which, look, Milwaukee and Brooklyn, we wanted a better, more competitive series. And I don't think it's quite over yet. I still think the series goes 6 games. Milwaukee's going to eventually stop shooting 20% from 3 and not getting any foul shots and not making any foul shots. And maybe Giannis will stop shooting jump shots all the time. And Brooklyn, they're probably not going to fall completely off a cliff offensively, but maybe slow down from shooting like 60%, 65% Kevin Durant, but we'll see. What I'm leading into there is that the Utah and Clippers series is the probably best series we're going to see in the postseason outside of a finals appearance between the Clippers or Jazz, whoever wins this series really, in the finals against Brooklyn. You could say which one about the Suns, but right now Vegas is saying that the most likely scenario for the NBA Finals is Utah versus Brooklyn. And then the second most is the Clippers versus Brooklyn. So this should be a very, very good series. And why is it going to be a good series? Well, what you're having right now is top 3 shooting teams, top 3 total defense teams, top 3 when it comes to half-court offense and half-court defense on both teams, and then also top 5 when it comes to both teams' 3-point shooting and 3-point defense. So it's going to be a very fun and interesting series. A lot of those things usually lean to go the under when it comes from a total standpoint, especially in game ones, as people want to usually take the overs. Now the Clippers are coming out of a series where there wasn't as many points scored every single game against Dallas, so maybe people go under there. But in general, people like to bet the overs, so I lean under in this series, or at least in this specific game. Now we can start on the Clippers side, where the one big thing in terms of rotations changing here is that I think Pat Beverly is going to play. Pat Beverly was by far the best player in the regular season for the Clippers when they faced this Utah team a couple times, guarding Donovan Mitchell. And it really wasn't even that close. We could pull up the double box for the Clippers minutes today. I currently have Pat Beverly, and you don't see his minutes on the screen. I have him at 16 minutes, and there's a chance that they play more here. This Clippers team also, courtesy of David Locke on the Locked On podcast network for the Utah Jazz, he put this stat out there. The Clippers are a totally different team now in the postseason. Not because, it takes more guts and stuff. No, they're literally structured differently now. They have played in the postseason more small ball without a center on the court minutes than they did all of the regular season. Literally one series, 7 games. That's all it took for them to play more small ball, which means Marcus Morris has been playing at the 5. Zubac only played like 2 minutes in Game 7. I don't expect Zubac to play much in this series at all. Would not make much sense to me. Zubac against Rudy Gobert is not much of an advantage, nowhere near it. Maybe the biggest disadvantage in all of basketball between two players. And then on the opposite side of that one, Zubac's defense would get absolutely destroyed by anybody coming down, let alone Rudy Gobert. So I'm not expecting Zubac to play much at all in this series. I currently have him at 5 minutes today, and that might honestly be high, which is the first thing I want to touch on. For the sponsor of the program is Prize Picks. You just take the over-under on player props. We won yesterday 10x. We won a couple $100 yesterday. A lot of people ended up winning thousands of dollars in the Discord. So if you are interested in trying to win thousands of dollars or a couple $100, you can either tail this prop or any other props you want to. But Zubac right now, his fantasy points are over under 15 fantasy points on Prize Picks. I have Zubac today for 3.8 fantasy points. I think there's a chance he doesn't play a single minute in this series, or in this game at least. So Zubac under 15 is where I'll go right now. We can touch on the other ones when we get there. Korkmaz under 10, since we already talked about Philly. I only have Korkmaz at around 7 fantasy points today. And if anything, I think he loses minutes to George Hill and or Matisse Thybulle because of defensive reasons. Talk about Marcus Morris when we get there. But if you want to tail this one, link down below. They'll also give you, not only can you win money by tailing this, and we're feeling real good about it, you can also get free money from Prize Picks to play with by just using the code SAL when you sign up. Any money you put in on your first deposit, they will double you. So if you put in 25, you get free money. 25, you put in 100, you get free $100. Literally free credit to gamble and wager with. So that's the first thing with rotations, is seeing likely more Patrick Beverley out there, especially in some closing run lineups. If they go small ball, you might see some more Beverley out there if defense is needed on their end for the Clippers. Outside of that, you'll see help defense with Batum and Marcus Morris. I don't know if they play 40 minutes and 38 minutes like they were towards the end of that last series, because it was like Game 6 and Game 7 elimination games, but I gave both, as you can see on the screen right now, decent minutes. 33 minutes for Marcus Morris, 33 minutes for Nicholas Batum. I expect those guys to both start again with Kawhi and Paul George, and we'll end up seeing if they start small. And if they start small and continue to start small, Marcus Morris, you probably see Reggie Jackson start again, and Pat Beverley come off the bench, Luke Kennard come off the bench, and Terrence Mann come off the bench. Those guys will be more so involved from a three-point standpoint. It's pretty straightforward how they're going to play in this one. Do whatever you want if you're Kawhi Leonard, and on the defensive side of this one, I don't really know who's going to try and slow Kawhi Leonard. In the regular season, they tried to slow Kawhi Leonard with a Royce O'Neal and with a Bojan Bogdanovic, and it was decent, but it was like a 2-game sample. It wasn't the Kawhi Leonard in the postseason that's taking over with 40% usage in some of these games. So Kawhi Leonard, obviously, Paul George, do whatever you want from a mid-range standpoint and go from there. And when you start to drive, you're going to get the open shots, which is why I don't think Rondo will play much in this series, because Pat Beverley's defense, I think, comes a little bit more on the court. He matches up much better against Donovan Mitchell than Luka Doncic. Pat Beverley was not playing in the first series, a little bit because he's gimpy, but mainly because he couldn't stop Luka Doncic, and there's no other reason for you to be on the court if you're not going to be on offense. So I think they at least give him a chance to try and stop some Donovan Mitchell. Now, if there's no Mike Conley in this game, maybe it's a little bit less of a need to put Pat Beverley out there, because there's one less guy that you have to worry about, so you can kind of burn maybe a Kawhi at times on a Donovan Mitchell, or just say, hey, you just try your best out there right now, Marcus Morris and Batum on Mitchell. If we really need to put Pat Bev in, we will, but we'll take a better offensive lineup. So there's definitely a good amount of ways that this thing can go right now, but that's the way that I expect it to happen. I expect Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard to actually get some decent run into the low to mid-teens because of their three-point ability to pick and pop. If it's ISOs for Kawhi and Paul George, off of those ISOs in small ball lineups, which is what you're going to see, is exactly what a small ball lineup does, is just pop threes. So Marcus Morris, more attempts from three, right? Luke Kennard, Nicholas Batum, all these guys should be getting out there. So I think you get less Rondo from a three-point standpoint, not the guy you want to have out there, as opposed to maybe the Luke Kennards and the Terrence Manns. Now, they're not going to be great on defense, but that's where the chess pieces come in later on if you actually need that defense with a Patrick Beverley. So for the Clippers right now, my rankings for the Clippers and my interests are clearly Kawhi Leonard. He might be my favorite play in the slate, and we'll talk about those top 6 plays at the end of the video if you stay around for DraftKings. So it's Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Batum, Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann. Those are guys in a player pool for me. We can talk about the final piece of this little prop contest that we entered over on Prize Picks, is Marcus Morris over 21 points. Marcus Morris shot terribly in 5 of the 7 games, and he got to like 20 to 21 points in 2 of those. The other 2, he blew him straight out of the water with 35-plus point fantasy days when he actually shot better than like 30%. I have Marcus Morris potentially under-projected today, and he's still projecting for over 24 fantasy points, which is 3 more than this one. So I have these runs right now. You can tail them down below on Prize Picks if you are indeed interested. Over Marcus Morris, under Korkmaz, and under Zubac's actual fantasy scores. We can talk about more later on the live stream. And then the last team to talk about right now is just Utah, and Utah is really going to depend, especially from a switching standpoint, from what they can do on offense as just dominating guards and not putting Jordan Clarkson's defensive liabilities out there, Joe Ingles' lack of efficiency from an offensive standpoint out there. Mike Conley is going to matter a lot. There's a big problem with Mike Conley right now. There's a massive problem. During the regular season, this injury was taking him, and he injured it in the last game against Denver. He only played like 11 minutes. He practiced some on Monday, but was not a full participant. It's a hamstring injury, which during the regular season was taking him about 2 weeks, 14 days to come back from. He's only had a couple days right now. So if I had to guess, in the regular season, he wouldn't be playing. It's the postseason. You try and get the first win right here in a very competitive series where you're actually favorites. I think it's unlikely that he actually plays. I'm projecting him to play because we can just adjust it when the time comes. But this is going to be an injury that I think actually lingers and impacts him somewhat. Now, if he doesn't play, you can have an advantage by going in the prop markets and taking the overs right now and hoping he doesn't play. There's a risk to that, obviously, if he does play. But it seems unlikely in the regular season he wouldn't be playing. He's questionable. We'll have to see what his pain management is, and we're really not going to know that it's a game-time decision. I think that Utah might go zone on defense because they just don't have the personnel, especially if Mike Conley is out. They have no personnel to try and guard the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard's. Like, when Kawhi Leonard has Royce O'Neal on him and Paul George has Bojan Bogdanovic on him, I mean, it's just all day one-on-one matchups there. You try and crash it all in those. It's wide-open three-point shots like it was a lot of the time in the Dallas series, and in those final 2 games of the series, they actually started to make some of those shots. Shout out Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson. So I don't think Royce or Bojan stand a chance against these guys. We can pull up right now the Clippers minutes onto the screen for all of you, or Utah's minutes onto the screen for all of you at home. And if you're still watching, like, subscribe, do all those things. These minutes, these projections, all that stuff is on Patreon down below. I appreciate everybody tuning into these videos. So the minutes are on the screen right now. Donovan Mitchell is by far my favorite player from this team right now. Got him projecting out for close to 45 fantasy points from a props market, from a DFS market. If you're talking about rotations here, I think Royce O'Neal has a lot of minutes floor security because of his defensive abilities. He's that stretch McCall Bridges type player, just not as good of a three-point shooter. I think he has a lot of stability to his minutes. Obviously, Mitchell and Gobert have stability to theirs. Bojan to an extent as like the only other good defender. But guys off the bench, they might have to dust off a new player. I don't know if they do that right away in game one that does not played in the playoff rotation, because Niang is not going to offer them much in the series. Favors is just strictly backup for 12 to 14 minutes. They might have to dust off another player and get some more defense out there just for specialty use in some of Niang's minutes, but it's not going to matter all that much from a betting perspective. So Utah's pretty straightforward here. We just have to see what happens with Mike Conley. If Mike Conley's out, expect more ball handling responsibilities for both Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles, and expect some more Jordan Clarkson's offense in the rotation, but not much of his defense. Right now, ranking for me is Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Jordan Clarkson. Those 6 players in that order are my top plays from Utah. And my top overall interest on this slate from a top six ranked players right now, I currently have on Patreon, which you can check out down below. I have a player pool currently for this 2-game slate of 26 players, and in that player pool is yeses, which means priorities is 13. Here are 6 of those 13 right now. You can see the pay-up options in Kawhi and Embiid are the guys that I like. I'm pretty high on Donovan Mitchell, and for value, Seth Curry at $5,000 is currently looking like my favorite value play in the slate. Some other value options are Marcus Morris and Nicholas Batum right now. There's punting options like Terrence Mann, Matisse Thybulle, George Hill in the 3K range, and then DeAndre Hunter if he plays. Kevin Huerter looks even better if Hunter doesn't play, as some other value pieces. But that's where we're at from a DFS standpoint. We talked about the props. In terms of betting lines right now, I have the Clippers as underdogs. I'll take them at +3. You can get them at +3.5 at some spots, +4 even. And I have the Joel Embiid Sixers, assuming he plays, hopefully I already took it, as the favorites I took. So the Sixers, even the series 1-1, and the Clippers to get up 1-0 in this series on the road against Utah. So that's where we're at, gang. Thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate you all in advance. We'll be live later today. We'll also have an NFL video dropping around noon Eastern time today. It's a quick little 10-minute video if you want to check it out. NFL content dropping daily as well until that season starts during the weekdays. And NBA content smacking you all day long. So see you on the live stream later today. Like, subscribe before you go. Support the sponsor of the program today, Prize Picks. You can check out those props. And if you're not already familiar, if you stayed all the way to the end, if you're not already familiar with what SuperDraft is, they have a contest today with $7,500 in there. It's a small field contest, which is what I like, and it's just a multiplier format. You can play whoever you want. My top projected plays on SuperDraft today in this order rank: Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Trae Young. But if you're looking for a sneakier type play, Seth Curry has a 1.75x multiplier. You can check it out down below. If you put any money in, they'll give you a $25 instant match with that link and the code SAL. But it's a pretty fun format. You don't have to worry about salaries as much. That is going to be SuperDraft, the other schmackaroo sponsor in part for this show. See you all in the next one. This shirt's fire. Peace out, gang.